What's up, guys? Welcome back to the UFC arena. We're talking about UFC on ABC, Holloway versus Keita, right? It's in the books, and we just gonna talk about some fights that took place, some of the standouts. I already spoke about Max Holloway versus Keita in a separate video, so please go check out that video if you want to see my instant reaction to that. Now I want to get into a few of the other fights on the card, starting at the prelims with Justin Tapper versus Carlos Felipe. This was a potential fight of the night candidate because these two guys were going at it. These guys literally fought like two bulls or two goats, two mountain goats. You see those goats with the big horns and they just ramming each other, going at each other. That's how these two guys were fighting. They were literally forehead to forehead, and the fight could have gone either way. It was a close fight. Felipe, he was more aggressive, while Tapper had more moments of control in the fight where he would hold Felipe against the cage and that sort of thing. But I think that the right person won. I mean, it depends on what you value, right? Some people value wrestling and control more. Some people put a lot of value on takedowns. There weren't any takedowns in this fight. However, I know people do value taking the wrestling and the control against the cage, which would have gone in Tapper's favor. However, I do think slightly the more significant blows went to Carlos Felipe, so I think that he won the fight. And all in all, it was a very entertaining heavyweight fight. Next, we go into Jocelyn Edwards versus Yanan Wu. I was impressed with Edwards. She's a fighter's fighter, right? She was aggressive. She was looking for the finish wherever the fight went. Early in the first round, she was taken down and she instantly looked for armbar that she got pretty close to cinching up. However, Yanan was patient and she was able to take her time and gradually inch her hand out of the armbar, so that was good on her part. And apparently this was a short notice fight for Jocelyn, and she did well. She did really well. Well, she won the fight, so can't go any better than that. And to come in on such a short notice against an awkward fighter is quite commendable, because Yanan Wu, she had almost a kind of Dominic Cruz-esque kind of bounce. I mean, she wasn't as good as Dominic Cruz, but she had a good bounce to her. She was active, she was moving, she was kind of awkward, but Jocelyn was able to deal with it and able to control her for most of the fight. However, in the third round, she started gassing, and Wu was coming on strong in that round. And Edwards, I found that she was making some questionable reads. She kept going for this spinning back fist combo, and she was very far away, like she wasn't closing the distance properly, and she was telegraphing a lot of her shots as she got gassed and as she got more tired, which is to be expected to a certain extent. But she did well. There's definitely room for improvement, but hats off to her. She did well and she earned her win in that fight. The next fight we're going to talk about would be Punahele Soriano versus Dusko Todorovic. And this was an interesting fight. Two undefeated contenders. Someone's O had to go and someone's O went flying. Because Puna, I'll just call him Puna for short, he had some serious power in his hands. He was throwing bombs, and the thing is, he's actually known more for his grappling. He's a very good wrestler, but he has power in his hands, and that's a trend that we see with a lot of wrestlers actually. If you think of Tyron Woodley, you think of Chad Mendes, you think of even Alexander Volkanovski, these guys who have this stocky and they have a wrestling background, but they have power in their hands. Puna fits into this category, and I was impressed with him because one, he's young and he made adjustments during the fight, and something I always like and something I personally always look for with these fighters is fight IQ, and he showed good fight IQ because when the fight just started, Dusko was leaning away and he was moving and he was avoiding shots, which is playing a risky game, and Puna made adjustments little by little, and he was getting closer and closer with his lefts and his rights, and those bombs were getting closer. And Dusko, if you want to play that game where you're leaning just out of the way, like Adesanya, like Anderson Silva, who we saw pay for that same thing, if you want to play that game, you need to make sure you're really, really good at it. And tonight, Dusko wasn't good enough because he got caught several times leaning away, and he got dropped again and again and again until Herb saw enough, and that was the end of the fight. So Dusko, he needs to put his hands up, or if he's going to do that lean back style, when you're retreating, you need to at least retreat on an angle. You can't just go straight back, because the person advancing, once they advance quick enough, they will catch you. And that's what Dusko found out, unfortunately. So that was a good win for Puna. The next group of fighters that stepped into the arena, we had Alessio De Chirico versus Joaquin Buckley. Now this one was a shock to me personally. I had Buckley winning this fight. I picked Buckley to win. I thought that Buckley was going to steamroll De Chirico, but that just goes to show, what do I know, right? I'm just a fan, and clearly I was wrong, because Buckley got slept. Let's just put it like that. Buckley got slept with a head kick, and it's not the first time he got slept. Now his record is 2-2 in the UFC. He has 2 vicious knockouts, and he's been knocked out twice viciously. And that one definitely took me by surprise. That one would definitely be the upset of the night, because Alessio was a big underdog. I did not see this coming at all, and Alessio, he impressed me in this fight. I still don't think, he's an elite level fighter, but he did well in this fight, right? He was keeping a good distance. He was making it very hard for Buckley to enter and to land the bombs, because Buckley has this kind of Mike Tyson style where he's bobbing and weaving, and he's trying to enter low to land these big rights and lefts over the top. However, because of the distance that De Chirico was keeping, Buckley found it very hard to get in. And that was good work by Alessio. And well, Buckley, the hype train has been officially derailed, and he needs to slowly get it back chugging again. Because right after Kevin Holland knocked out Buckley, he had that crazy KO, and it was all the hype. So all he needs to do is spin and back kick somebody else, and he'll be right back where he started. So next in the arena, we have Ponzinibio versus Jingliang. Now Santiago Ponzinibio again was the favorite to win. Jingliang was a significant underdog, and what happened? Ponzinibio got slept quick in the first round. Like, I didn't even really take much away from this fight in terms of Ponzinibio. I couldn't really tell how, like, if he lost a step or not, because he didn't have that much fight. He didn't get to fight that long, and from what I saw, he looked pretty normal. He looked like he was still, it was still early days. He was still finding his range, still testing the distance, and then out of nowhere, boom, Jingliang just came over the top with that left, and that was the end for Ponzinibio. One punch, slept, went good night. So that's a tough one for Ponzinibio, because after coming from a 2-year layoff to have your 7-fight win streak just snapped just like that. It's really hard to tell how much of a factor his layoff was, but Jingliang, he had excellent movement, right? He was very light on his feet. He was bouncing back and forth. He had an excellent performance. He looked fast out there, which is always good, and he really showcased his power. So the way he landed that punch, when you saw the replay, the way that he landed on the chin and rattled the brain, that punch was going to knock out anybody. So it's just a tough one for Santiago. Hopefully he could, rebound from this. The fight before this, he fought with Neil Magny, and Magny, an underrated fighter, Magny won. Magny is actually fighting soon. I'll be doing a video on that, so look out for that one. Next in the arena, we have Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown. And this fight, finally a fight that went kind of how I thought it would go. Condit had the more technical striking. Matt Brown came out with a game plan, a clear game plan to take Carlos down and to beat him on the ground, because if you know anything about Carlos Condit, you know that he's been grounded and submitted several times. So I could definitely see why Matt Brown thought that this would be a good game plan. The unfortunate thing is, Matt Brown isn't a wrestler of the same caliber of certain people who would have beaten Carlos Condit. Matt Brown is not Tyron Woodley. Matt Brown is not Damian Maia on the ground. So for him to, he got Carlos down, but he was not able to control Carlos in the same way, or even threaten with submissions the way that some of these other fighters could have done. So Carlos was able to reverse him, and then when Carlos took him down, then it was like, oh, this wasn't supposed to happen. Matt Brown didn't prepare for that, because in his mind he was gonna take Carlos down, but not, he wasn't supposed to be on the ground. Carlos is not a wrestler. Carlos doesn't take people down that often. But Carlos had a good showing. He really showed his grit, he showed his toughness, he showed his fight IQ, which is something I always appreciate. And Matt just couldn't handle him at the end. So good win for Carlos Condit. I did not even realize that Matt Brown was 40 years old. That's quite up there. Usually you could get away with fighting so late into your career at the heavier weights. Like we have DC. Well, DC's retired now, but those heavyweights, they could usually fight into their 40s. At the lower weights, not so much. So maybe it's time for Matt Brown to start thinking about, hanging it up. I mean, who am I? I'm just a fan, right? So I can't tell Matt Brown what to do. It's just my opinion. And that's it at the end of the day. And yeah, so that's it for the breakdown. As I said, Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, I gave that its own separate video. That fight was amazing, so please check it out. Please remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to smash the bell so you'll be notified. I'll be posting videos regularly. We have a lot of fights coming up, so I'll be around as long as the fights are around. Thank you.